Nick, they asked me, why is it still taking you 2 years to finish this thing? Well, here's your answer. All these little details are taking forever. Something so simple like a winch box. Now, we didn't want to have it all gaudy where it's sitting on top of the winch, routed right there. It's just ugly. So what I want to do is kind of keep everything hidden, look as stock as possible. So I made this handy dandy little winch bracket here for the control boxes. Now the first thing you gotta do when you get a control box is notice how small or how short the length of the wires are. You gotta pop this off, and then you got to pull all the wires off of these solenoids. You gotta take all those out, and then take the solenoids out too. Just pull it out, and then it makes it easier for routing your wires through the body. And then you can figure out how long, like for the rear winch, I started at the back, ran the wires up to where I wanted them. And then this is all 2-gauge wiring. Notice I've got nice hydraulically crimped terminals with the heat shrink over them to prevent corrosion, because that's going to be our #1 problem on this Jeep. We don't want corrosion messing with our amperage. I also went authentic and got the vintage wire loom that's coated in asphalt, so that's pretty cool. So I've got all that ran up into here. Put those onto the solenoids. Now the next problem we have is that you don't want to be lazy and pop open the hood, hook up the winch controller to the little tab out here. That's too much pain. You want to be sitting in comfort, kick back, going on a switch, right? In and out for the winch. So what you gotta do is cut the wires off of the original switch area. And there's also ground hanging off the outside for that stuff. So what I've done is just drill a hole through the side of the box here, because this is sitting right up against the fender, so it's got to come out this side. Drill the hole, put a grommet. The original ones are pretty thin, and these are a little bit higher quality. And then I run that up here also with the main power wire of the winch. And then once I get everything kind of situated, I'll get these tied together really nice, loom it all. So it'll be really nice to have it hardwired in the Jeep. You just flip a switch up on the dash to operate the thing. Both the boxes are in the same location on the Jeep in case a solenoid goes bad. The wires are pretty hidden. This is all you're going to see of the winch wires, so that's pretty cool. So overall, it's just the little details that really make this thing a clean build. Alrighty, got the battery hooked up. All the ground straps, one off the battery to the frame here, one from the frame to the front winch right there, and then one that goes to the engine right here, just because. And then our power wire snakes all the way down under there, and then it comes out in the same area as the winch control boxes. So when you're looking at it, it's actually pretty clean right there, and then everything swoops up into here really nice. So oh boy, this is a moment. It's like, did you fail or did you do a good job? So theoretically, right now this isn't mounted in yet, but it's just kind of hanging there. This is the battery cutoff switch. So basically, because the way that the alternator works on this thing, long story short, it's a self-regulating alternator. But the problem is that it's a 24-volt system, and the wire that regulates the alternator, I just had to hook it right up to the charging wire of the alternator. So problem is that when it does that, it just pulls a draw through the battery. So that's why I've got this shut-off switch, and it's just nice in case of emergency. So theoretically right now, none of the winches should work because I have the power off from the battery, and they should not be on the winches. Would you just look at that? Oh, she's alive. We have winches. Let's just take a moment here and appreciate the level of detail gone into this thing. Not only did I paint the inside of the headlight buckets, but I also drilled a hole in them for water evacuation. Look at that. I'm awesome. So the first step in doing a brake line, this is just kind of a cheaper cutting tool for metal. You basically, because these things have to be cut perfectly straight, so you have to have a nice tool like this. So basically you slide it onto there in between the rollers, and you kind of tighten it down till it gets hard to move. Then you twist it all around the brake line, tighten it a little more, twist it around, tighten it a little more. Eventually it digs its way through and cuts this. Then once it cuts through, just go ahead and make sure the edge is perfectly nice and smooth. You can do a little bit of sanding if you need to. And then once that's done, we're gonna put it into the die here. So since this thing is a mile long, it might be a little difficult, but. Okay, so I got a little bit of brake fluid on this rag. Kind of a little bit of lube when we're doing this, since we're gonna be smashing it into a die. It's just what they recommend. So we've got our die on here. These are interchangeable. The first die we're gonna want on this is a super flat one. You can see this is flat. That's basically going to zero out our brake line. I'll show you what I mean. So, oh, before you forget, you're gonna want to put your. Don't forget this, because if you forget this, then you got to do it all over again. So you put that on there. Don't forget that. It's be a nice holding the camera while I'm doing this. You shove that through the die. You'll see it. It's sticking out a little bit here, so we're gonna just get a little bit of attention on that. Just not much. So the zeroing die does is it takes it and it zeroes it out into the block so it's perfectly flat. Go ahead and tighten her down. Just make sure she's zeroed. Okay, now we got that. This is basically a two-part process. First part, OP1 3/16, which I assume is something about part 1. So you go ahead and you do this. Hold my camera, it's real fun. Alright, there's part 1. So now we're going to go to OP2 for a 3/16 line, which is right there. And that'll do the final part of the flare. And there you have it, folks. The double flare. She's not really going to show up good on camera, but basically you need that fancy tool to do that perfectly. And that's probably the most critical part of your brake system, is make sure that flare is perfectly seated. So you can see how nice this tool works. I mean, you use it on one job, it's paid for itself. I mean, to take your car somewhere, get all the brake lines done, made, I mean, you're going to be spending more than 170 bucks. If you're doing it one time, obviously don't buy the tool, but if you're like me and you got a lot of junk laying around, you're going to probably use this quite a bit, and it's going to more than pay for itself. Another taste of the detail. The Mutt distributor has 2 vent lines here. One there, one there. I don't know if they're vacuum or what in the world they do, but standard line just was normal, straight, had no flare on it. So when you put a rubber hose on here, it's got to be rubber because the whole distributor twists, so you got to have a lot of slack in there. But they just left them straight. There was no flares, and all Mutts were like that. So I'm putting on like something similar, like a windshield wiper vacuum hose, and that way when we put it on, that thing's gonna seal it right there. It's not gonna be able to slide off or get any water in there. That's gonna be really nice. So just little details like that to kind of ensure the longevity of the engine. So we're T-minus 4 days until road trip to Daniel Boone National Forest. And the side of the Jeep, it's plain. We can't have plain. So obviously a great utilization of our time and resources would to be put a stencil on here. So that's what we're gonna do. Alright, first coat, you go kind of light just to seal the edges of the lettering. That way when you go on the heavy coat, it doesn't run down into the stencil. So this paint doesn't really know what a light coat is, apparently. Good enough for government work, baby. Just enough hint that it's a military-based vehicle, but not an in-your-face. Subtle, yet effective. We're about to do something monumental. Oil in the transfer case, baby. This is just like all the other Jeeps. This has a different transmission transfer case. Still uses the GL1 oil. That way it doesn't eat up the brass synchros inside the tranny. And why is this a feat, you may ask? Well, you can't put oil in until you have the output shafts on. So let me just walk you through what we've done here. So a Mutt originally is independent suspension, so your drive shaft will just go from here to the front or the rear to a solid differential, and then it'll have independent suspension on the ends. So the drive shafts on these never moved. And the problem with that is that they were just a slip yoke where there's no bolt holding this on. So we actually put this tranny on the mill and drilled and tapped the input and output shafts, both ends. These shafts were hardened about 3/16 of an inch deep, and once you break through that, it's pretty easy to drill it. Drilled and tapped that for a 5/16 bolt, and then you'll notice that this is a different yoke than what came off of the mutt originally. And the reason we had to go with the different yoke is that the original mutt U-joint style is just super thick. So, alrighty, here's the new drive shafts for the Submarine. We definitely owe a special shout out to Patterson Driveline just south of Indianapolis. They did a really nice job on these things. So the problem with the original mutt yoke is that you can see right here the bolting points on this thing. They're so high up here that when the drive shaft is rotating around, it would actually hit the heads of the bolts, and you might get like 5 degrees of flexibility in there. So what they did is they took the original yokes, which was basically this shaft here and the spot for this to bolt onto. Cut that off, welded on a new circular piece, and even got the flange for the oil seal on there. Then, now that we've got this, it's drilled, so that way we can bolt it straight to the mutt shaft so it doesn't slide out. Then they've got a real U-joint attachment here with all new drive shaft, and then just a standard 1310 GPU joint back there. So these are real U-joint parts that you can go out and buy in the store, whereas the mutt stuff is only new old stock. They don't make these anymore. A lot stronger than the old style, and should definitely hold up well to the abuse that this thing's gonna see. They definitely took care of me on pricing. They did an excellent job. I mean, the weld quality is phenomenal. So definitely, if I ever have a drive shaft I ever need made, Patterson Driveline south of Indy, they are the guys to go to. These new yokes are a lot bigger. The problem I had is that you'll notice that there's no clearance. Now this thing was shaved down already from the original mutt style yokes, but I had to shave it even further to make this thing fit. I had to round off the back of that yoke, so that one was pretty miserable. However, the back end, we got plenty of room for activities back here, so that one was pretty easy to just throw it on and go. So now I did end up having to take the stupid tranny half apart. When I was sanding this is a shift rod for the 2 and 4-wheel drive. I was sanding it to make this fit. I accidentally sanded it too far to where, because you know the shaft slides in and out of the tranny. I sanded it too far into the oil seal area, so it would have leaked oil like a sieve had I left it there. So I had to buy a new rod, new oil seal. The side of the tranny right here has this little cover. You pull that off, you can access everything in here, replace all this stuff. So that's what I did. So that was basically take 2 of the whole process, and that's why putting oil in is such a magnificent feat.